Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
And you want a quality education that leads to a fantastic J-O-B. I am Mark Stucker, and I'm a college coach.
And I am Anika Madden, and I am a parent. And it is Thursday, December 13th, and welcome to episode number 46, How to Improve Your ACT or SAT Scores. In this week's news, see which private colleges have lowered tuition prices. And we're in chapter 46 of 171 answers, and we're discussing tips that can be used to improve your SAT or ACT scores. And this week's question is from a student who wants to know how to get a work-study job at a college. And Mark interviews Miss Ashley Sempowski, who is the Assistant Director of Recruitment and Outreach for Springfield College. And they're talking about what you need to know about community colleges.
Anika, I know you've got a 21-year-old. Is Jalen 21? Is he 21 or 22 now?
You squeezed me. He's 22.
Oh, my goodness. You got a 22-year-old. And then you've got, what's Naya, 16?
Oh my God, Bart, have we not talked in a while?
Don't tell me
10,
she's
17. 10, 17, 22. That's our chart.
Well, guess what? I have two 20-year-olds now. So Karis is 22 and Joy turned 20 this week. So I just huge shout out.
Birthday, Joy.
Yeah, huge shout out. And we are spoiling her. So she got a car, which I didn't get my kids' cars at 16, 17 to 19, but I did at 20. She got a car, and that was a surprise. We love surprises. So that shocked her. She's like screaming. I have it on video. It's awesome. And then she loves the play Annie. So last night, her sister treated her to go see the play Annie. And she doesn't know this tonight, but I'm treating her to go to one of those like Brazilian steak places tonight. So we're in celebration mode over here in the Stucker household right now.
Happy birthday.
You'll see what it likes when little Johnny hits 20. You feel old when your youngest kid is 20.
Let's turn to college hot topics in the news.
All right. In this week's news, the title, Mark, is See Which Colleges Have Lowered Tuition Prices. And this is found in U.S. News and World Report by Miss Farran Powell. And so what this is that private schools, they've lowered tuition and fees since 2013, and they're now averaging about $24,500 per year. And so just a couple of highlights. So Ms. Powell, she goes in and she lists a couple of schools that have very recently slashed their prices. Just a few including Birmingham Southern College, Stillman College in Alabama, Sweetbriar College in Virginia, Drew University in New Jersey. And Mark, she's mentioning this term tuition reset throughout the article, which is basically these schools that are setting new sticker prices for the institution.
Lower.
But one thing that I'm sorry. Yes, right. Lowering them, right?
Yeah. That's a tuition reset.
But she also mentions, and I don't want to dive all into the details, but she also mentions there are a couple of schools that, they haven't bought into that so much because they do believe that there is a correlation that people believe that higher prices means a better education. But here's where I want you to take it over, Mark. The way she really starts is that she's saying that although some of these colleges are slashing their sticker prices, there is still what students need to understand is that they could still basically pay the same in tuition and fees, meaning that it wouldn't really change. So, Mark, can you please unravel that? Because she lost me on that one.
Well, you did a really good job of summarizing the key points and setting it up for me. So good job there. So
thank you.
Yeah. There's been this huge controversy in college admissions, right? When it relates to pricing. And I'll go over both of the different models and you'll kind of see I think it'll make a lot of sense. So one model it's patterned after the highly selective, very, very expensive schools. Remember, was it last week, Anika, we did the whole Georgia Tech, MIT, the MIT cost more? Yeah. So you've got some of these really, really expensive schools that really do have very high costs, right? Because they pay their faculty and their staff large amounts of money. And they have small class size, and they give substantial amounts of aid away. And so they've kind of set a benchmark, right? A very, very high cost model. And you often see cost of attendance for these schools into the 60s and 70,000s. So you've got another group of schools, though. I hate to say this sounds so pejorative, but I'm going to use it. Let's just call them the wannabes that would like to be where I didn't say anybody by name, so I feel I can go there as long as I don't have any.
You know who you are.
Nobody's coming after me. The wannabes. So that's where they would like to be in the marketplace, but they're really not. In reality, they actually don't have to have that price structure because they're not paying their faculty and the staff that type of money. Because remember, staff, faculty benefits and expenses is one of the hugest line items if you actually look at a breakdown of cost for any school. So they're not paying anywhere near that to their staff and faculty. Oftentimes their ratio, teacher-student ratio, staff-to-student ratio is higher. But they're sort of trying to piggyback off of those other schools on cost because they have bought into the notion that says if the public sees that the price is higher, then they will think that the school is better. Mm-hmm. So they've adopted that same price structure. But in reality, college is kind of like flying an airplane in the sense of when you're on an airplane, you kind of know that the person to the left of you and the right of you, you all paid different amounts of money, right? Like nobody really all paid $300 for the same ticket. Somebody got some super special price line deal for $191 and somebody else is paying $531. Like that's just the way it is. And that's kind of how it is when it comes to costs. So the model that's been out there has been you set the price really high. You make people feel like, oh, your school must be really good because you're able to charge $65,000. But in reality, nobody's really paying that other than, I didn't say nobody. In some cases, actually is nobody. But in other cases, the only kids that are paying that are the weakest kids that barely squeaked in and probably just squeaked in, quite honestly, because they can pay full freight. And then what you do is you take the kids that you really, really wanted, the kids that you feel will make your school stronger, the kids that will improve your stats and improve your brand and improve your education, and you give them copious amounts of merit financial aid to attract them. So in reality, the price is way up here, so let's say 65, but maybe most students are paying 30. So, so it's called tuition discounting. Mm-hmm. It's a huge discount between what people are actually paying and what you list the price as. That's a term called tuition discounting. So if your price is 60 and people are paying 30, then you have a tuition discount rate of 50%. So that's one model out there that you use your high price to send the message to the public, you're a great school. And then you lose large amounts of that money to throw merit aid at students so that you can actually get them to enroll. And then they feel like they're getting a bargain. So that's one model. But the problem with that model for schools that don't have strong brand recognition is a lot of times it doesn't work. Because what happens is people look at, let's just call it generic you. I'm not going to call them wannabes anymore because I don't know. For some reason I feel that's more offensive than generic you. Generic you doesn't sound much better though either, does it? But we're gonna go. Okay, all right. I'll trust you on that. So generic you over here tries, also a wannabe. Let's give him a first name and last name. Generic you is their first name. Wannabe is the last name. Generic you wannabe. Generic you wannabe. They try to do what the big dogs do. Set their price 60, 70,000 and think they can do this great tuition discounting and give all these dollars to everybody. But guess what? The public says, you're generic, you want to be. I'm not paying you that kind of money. So then they don't even get applicants in the applicant pool to even put this high tuition, high discount model in place. So they don't even get a chance at throwing $30,000 or $40,000 at people. And so therefore the competing model comes in, which is the tuition reset model. Okay. And this is what all these schools are doing. And so what they're actually doing is they're slashing their tuition by 30%, sometimes even more. And they're hoping to attract large amounts of applicants because look at us, we're a bargain. But they're not getting less money. All they're doing is they're no longer giving that 20 or 30 or 40,000 away that they were doing before to the top students. but they're hoping that they'll get more applicants in the applicant pool, and then they can hopefully move them along. In admissions, you have what's called your funnel, where you take people from inquiry, all the way, hopefully to applicant, hopefully to matriculant, and then you get a student. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
So it's just two different models to try to get students into the funnel. But one thing I will say is when you see schools do tuition reset, they're never going to say, we're struggling getting applicants, so we're lowering our prices. They're going to roll it out, of course, really positively, because nobody wants to go to, that's like saying, please give me a date. I've never had anybody ever date me. Would you please give me a date? I'm so desperate. It's not the best way to attract someone.
Right.
So they're never going to do that. They're going to talk about how great it is. They've got a new focus on affordability and all that. But in reality, you're probably not paying less money. So that's the idea. Any questions? What are your thoughts, Anika?
My thoughts are all to my all non-wealthy friends is you just focus on that merit money and just let's not focus on those sticker prices. How about that? And just let's back into it that way.
Yeah. Now, but keep in mind for these lower schools, don't expect much merit money. Just expect with the tuition reset, expect them to be setting their costs a lot closer to what their true costs actually are. And they're just taking, and so in the past, if they used to throw $25,000 at a student, now they maybe throw $5,000. I'm not saying they have none, because they still have some, because merit money is proven to be a great tool, but just know that's what's going on. And also know that it's oftentimes an indication that a school is struggling to attract students when you see a major tuition reset. But don't think that it's not a good school. Like when you read the list of all those schools that are doing tuition resets, I refer those some of those schools. Some of those schools I like a lot. So don't necessarily think, oh, this is a bad school, but just know that, generic wannabe thought they could race with the big dogs sticker prices, and the public kind of rejected their ability to do that.
Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
Oh yeah, the chapter would be me. One of these days I'll figure that out. One of these days I'll remember that. You think by episode 47 I would know that it's time for me to... I give you time. I'll still give you time to marinate on it. You get there every time. This takes me 3 extra minutes. It's all good. All right, listeners. So we are in chapter 46 today of a book I wrote called 171 Answers. And this is a 691-page reference book that I wrote. And what I did was, I know we're in this busy, fast-paced age where people don't have a lot of time. So what I did was I took the most frequently asked questions that I get from students and parents, turned each one into its own chapter. And while some people read the book cover to cover and mark it all up, and God bless those who do, because I do feel they learn a lot, what most students do is they go to the table of contents, they see which questions are my questions, and then they jump right to that question and they get that answer. And so what we do in this section is we kind of take a couple highlights from each chapter. So today we still are in section 3 of the book, which deals with how you get in the schools on your list. And we're going to be in that for almost another year, Anika, up to chapter 93 of the book. So we're in 46 and we're in our test score section still, which will be it for another 2 months or so. Different questions about test scores. And today's question is what? I was seeing if you were listening. I busted you.
Hold on, Mark. Let's back up to that again.
And today's question is what?
It's how to improve your ACT or SAT scores. Yay!
So what were your takeaways?
So, Mark, well, I mean, you have a pretty straightforward, clear list there, my friend. And what I can tell you is that I can, let me just share the ones with you that are priorities for me with Miss Janaea. And the one you right off the rip, read daily. That just jumped right off the page, right? So that was the first one, and that's always critical. That's always a priority for us, especially. And then word of the day
Mhm.
at dictionary.com. Again, it's all about vocabulary and comprehension, all that good stuff,
Mhm.
right? And then one that we're deep into right now, and that's working on test strategies with our test prep
Mhm.
tutor,
Mhm.
and making sure we're on track with that. And then take practice tests often. For some reason, before just within the last month or so, I'm just really coming around to that whole practice test thing. So those are my top tips that that Janaea will be drilled down into her head over these next few weeks.
Great. So let me highlight a couple of them. I cannot emphasize the reading, and this is one for those who are really, really, really young. Please implement it now. Test prep starts at a young age, and I started doing something when I was doing boarding school admissions, Anika. I would in boarding school admissions, we actually interview every kid who applies. So only the most selective colleges do interviews for every kid, but we interviewed every kid. And when I would interview a student and I already had their SSAT scores, which is basically just a junior version of the SAT, every time I would see a kid that had these stratospheric scores, which was kind of often because we were a pretty selective school, I would ask them, can I ask you a question? Do you like to read? And I'm telling you, and kid you not, Anika, probably asked that question to over 85 kids. And the answer is 85 for 85. There was not a single time when I saw off the chart scores in the reading section, in in the vocab, off the test. It was always, yeah, they love to read. Oh, I can't get a kid out. Or the parents would say, oh, I can't keep that kid from having a book. They love it. It's always so the point is, you actually start your test prep now by reading wisely, and different types of literature, nonfiction. Read. I mean, read what you're interested in because that'll keep you sustained. But reading things like Time and Newsweek and good nonfiction books, you just exposed to a lot of vocab. And then when you see a word that you don't know, look it up.
Right.
And then I tell students actually use it. Now you kind of come off a little crazy if you're talking to your 11-year-old friend and you're talking about circumlocution or something. So you might want to use the word. You might want to use the word on like your parent or something. But that's how it sticks. So I want to emphasize the importance of reading widely and reading early at an early. People that read at an early age, they don't even need to do any test prep for that portion of the test. They really don't, because they've been building their skills up their whole life. So that's one thing I want to say. Now, the other thing, okay, you want to say something that sounded like I heard you there. You wanted to say something.
Oh no, what I was just going to say is that one thing that I kind of sway away from and tend to forget is to make them read a wide range of things. It's always read a book.
Yes.
So it's helpful for me. It was really helpful for me as another reminder. I'm like, oh yeah, they do actually need to read the newspaper. They do need to read online blogs and things like that. So that in itself was helpful.
Good. The other thing you said that I cannot emphasize this enough. In fact, I was busting out trying to say this last week when we were talking about how many times to take the test. Remember that and I just held off because I knew we had this week and I would get my chance. Practice test, practice test, practice tests. They are so important. And quality practice tests. Like we gave some resources in our last 2 weeks and a recommended resource of the week, how you can really use quality practice tests, former tests that were even used as real tests and real good tests. It's important. But what you want to do with these practice tests is you want to assiduously study where you're making your mistakes. So the first thing you want to do is you want to simulate real test conditions, right? You get used to taking the real honor the times, all that stuff. And what I used to do, Anika, with my students, I haven't done it as much lately. I still should do it, but I've kind of, kids are so busy that I think I've probably gotten a little weaker here. I've succumbed to that a little. I used to work with all my students. I used to have them get this book, like 10 real SATs, 10 real ACTs, right? And 10 weeks prior to the test, on the same time they took the test, Saturday morning, I would have them take a practice test. And then they would go back, and this is really important. It's not just taking the test. You have to assiduously study where you made your mistakes. And then and then you have to try to figure out why you made your mistake. Sometimes a lot of people make casual errors all the time, right? Sometimes like, I knew that. So you want to first of all work on your speed and tempo so that you can get done early enough to go back and check your work. That's important. So you won't make all those casual mistakes. But if you can't figure it out, then that's when a tutor or an instructor is invaluable. If you can't figure it out on your own. And that if you keep doing that over and over and over, that's when I see people take like huge score gains. What are you thinking?
I think I love it. And I think Naya, oh my God, I'm so excited for her.
Hey, some of it is just blood, sweat, and tears. It's work. It's toil.
Yeah. Good old-fashioned work, right?
Yeah, but shout out to one of my students, Lauren. She did a fantastic job raising her scores from the low 500s to the high 700s. Okay,
oh, wow.
With hard work. So it can be done. That was in a section.
Awesome.
That was in one section, not the whole test.
I went through my head for a second. I was like, oh,
that's not so great out of 1,600, but out of 800 is pretty darn good.
Good job, girl. Good job.
It's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right. Our question comes from Mr. Jared. He's a high school senior in Atlanta. And he asked, Mark, how does one go about getting a work-study job at a college?
Yeah, that was a great question by Jared. And before we dive into his actual answer, I think let's not assume, Anika, that people know what work-study is.
Okay.
So let's start out with that. So first of all, the way you even get a work-study job is when you complete the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. You have to express interest in work-study. So there's an opportunity to check a box. Then you do have to have financial need because colleges will prioritize those with greatest need over those with lesser need to actually give a work-study job. Then you need to still go out and get the job. Now, there's lots of reasons why people do work-study. One, it's flexible hours. Okay, very flexible hours. You're usually working for a really sensitive employer because most of these jobs are on campus. So you have a convenient location.
Mm-hmm.
So you got flexible hours, sensitive employer, convenient location. And then I'm going to get this more in a second. But some of the jobs can be in your field of study, which I want to really emphasize in a second.
Ooh.
But here's another really big thing about work study. And this is something we haven't talked about in this podcast before. When a student makes money for college, their own money, not parent money, their own money, right? The first $6,060 is excluded from being used in the needs-based analysis of how much you have to pay. So the first $6,600 is excluded. But anything after that, 50% of what you make will reduce your eligibility for need-based aid. So if you have a student that makes $2,000 more than that, let's say they make $8,660. Of that extra $2,000 they made, $1,000 of it is going to offset their ability to qualify for need-based financial aid. So they're making more money, but they're kind of seeing 50 cents on the dollar. But with work study, your money in work study is not counted in that $6,660. It's protected from that. Because one thing I didn't say about work study is a government-based program. So part of the pay you actually get is coming from the federal government. And some is coming from the school. So it's a federal, government program to help make college more affordable. So that's another reason why students do work study. Now, work study jobs are either on-campus jobs or they're off-campus jobs, usually for a nonprofit. But in some cases, colleges have partnerships even with some for-profit off-campus companies that the federal government allows to qualify for work study. If they're in your major, and you can prove that they're in your course of study, sometimes that can get approved. So, some of the common jobs you'll see with work study are like dining hall jobs, bookstore jobs, library jobs, college event jobs, that kind of thing. But, I encourage students not to settle for those jobs because now, don't get me wrong, library job can be great if you get to study maybe when people aren't coming in. So I want to give a huge shout out to a student I worked with named Courtney, and worked with her through the high school process, college process. She ended up going to Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. And Courtney did something that was amazing. She got to campus and she qualified for work study. And she said, you know what? She's seen a lot of her friends working in the dining room, doing the college event scene, doing the bookstore, library, all those kind of jobs. And she's like, no, I'm interested in the medical field. So she reached out to the professors and looked at the job boards and specifically got a job in her area of interest. And she wasn't making $7.50 an hour. She's making $11 an hour, which was nice. She did it for all 4 years. And then check this out. The story gets even better, Anika. So Courtney's from Atlanta. So she moved back to Atlanta. And first 2 months she was out of college, she didn't have a job. Then she called me, Mark, I got this amazing job. We met for lunch. So I said, I have to hear how you got this job. And it's a really good job she got. I said, do you think it was your Vanderbilt degree that carried, the name recognition that got you in the door? She's like, no, I don't even know if they knew the difference between Vanderbilt and all the Georgia schools. She said, you know what got me my job? My work study job for 4 years. I was able to give, it was in the same line of work, and I was able to give, my supervisor as a reference. And they called and then they raved about me and the work that I'd done for 4 years. But all of this happened because she sought out a job in her major. And so what are you thinking, Anika? What are you thinking?
Wow. I didn't, that was surprising. That is surprising because I always assumed that work study jobs were on campus. I didn't realize they were off campus, let alone that you can go and do something remarkable like Courtney did.
Yeah.
But man, let's get to it. How do they get it?
How does this thing work? Well, you got to seek it out. So one of the mistakes people make, and this is something I have to really warn people about, because what happens when you get your aid award back and you're figuring out how much you have to pay, and they'll have work study in there. Now, the average student that does work study makes $2,600 a year. So a lot of people will see work study in there and they'll think, oh, I don't have to pay that. No. When you're paying your tuition bill at the start of the year, that work study money is not in there. Your work study job is going to be just like a regular job in that you have to go, work the hours, get a check. They have to pay you at least monthly. Of course, some of them will do it more frequently than that, and they'll pay you hourly. But you have to go get the job.
Okay.
You have to go to, financial aid office is a good place to start. They can direct you. The career job boards and job banks. But it's on the student to go get the job. You don't walk through and part of your registration process and they say, here's your job, go start. It doesn't work that way.
So, but let me ask you this though, because you said the financial aid office is a start. I mean, because it is a work study program, is there not like this work study board that you can go to and find out where all the jobs are listed there? Or is it just that random where there are just so many pockets of opportunities?
Every school is different. And I like to start with the financial aid office because they can direct you to the best sources. Because once again, financial aid officers are in the business of trying to make the school affordable for you. So they'll know, they'll be able to individually navigate you through that school. But a lot of times it's multiple sources. So it could be job boards listed, it can be job banks. It's a lot of different things. It can be campus employment postings. But a lot of times there are job postings in the financial aid office. So that's where I'd recommend you start, and they'll be able to direct you from there where to go.
Very interesting. I love it.
What did you learn?
Jared?
What did you learn on this?
All of that. I'm still stuck on the fact that it's beyond the campus. I just had no idea. Jalen went the RA route, so we didn't. We didn't have to dive into this. But this is fascinating for Naya because I just had no idea. I would have never known that.
Well, keep in mind, most jobs are on campus. Like Courtney, her jobs are on campus. She was doing research with the medical, with the medical school and with the medical team doing research. So there can be, don't just assume because it's on campus, it's not a quality job. Like there's great opportunities on colleges.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. But I will say though, those are the ones that you kind of associated with. It's like, oh, you're sitting at the front desk. Oh, you're just sitting in the library doing your homework. Oh, I have made that association with work study jobs. So that's great to know that there's much more opportunity within those.
Yeah, because if you can be getting real work experience in your major, you're just that much more, that's that much more employable, as Courtney found out.
Yes. That is awesome. I love it.
Friends, I am super excited. Our regular listeners know that I'm really proud of 4 former students I've worked with that have pursued admissions careers. And our special guest today is one of those 4, and she is a rising star in admissions. I've told her, and I believe with all my heart, she's going to be a VP of enrollment someday. You watch. But I'm super excited today to interview Ashley. Of course, I knew her as Ashley No, but she's since got married. Ashley Sempowski has some kids, and she's going to talk about a really important subject. We're going to talk about really what you don't know about community colleges, or we're going to debunk some myths about community colleges, because Ashley has been actively involved in recruiting community college students at both of the colleges that she's worked at. So listen and enjoy as I talk with someone who I have a very special place in my heart for.
And now, this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, I am extremely excited today. If I seem a little bit more fired up, it's because this is our first interview with one of my former students from Westtown School. We have Ashley Sempowski. I knew her as Ashley No with us today. Welcome to your College Bound Kid, Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. I'm so excited to have this opportunity. Thank you for reaching out to me. I'm just so excited.
Yeah, and I'm going to have Ashley, tell us a little bit about her background, but I have to tell you this before she does. So I led a tour guide program at Westtown School for about 2 years, where we had up to 80 tour guides, and Ashley was always a superstar tour guide, superstar panelist. And I used to say, Ashley, you'd be great in admissions. And here she is, one of 4 students I've worked with that are in admissions, and I'm just really, really proud of her. So with that, Ashley, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, and let us know how you ended up in college admissions and any different roles that you've had within admissions.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Does that mean you also get a cut of my paycheck now, too?
Oh, yeah, of course it does. Where's that money? Send me the money.
Well, definitely, that interest and love for admissions and higher education definitely came from you. First meeting you at Westtown, you were definitely the catalyst, in this career that I've built. I started doing a little work in the office, and like you said, I became a tour guide, then eventually became tour guide head. And then even in college, I continued to work in admissions. I was a visitor services coordinator, where I kind of did a little bit of everything. I planned student visits, coordinated interviews, processed applications, filed applications, and a lot more. And then a couple years after college, I had my first official post-grad position as an admissions counselor at a 4-year private liberal arts school here in Delaware, and was there for about 2 years before accepting my current promotion and position as Assistant Director for Recruitment and Outreach at Springfield College.
That is so great. And Ashley and I have been on LinkedIn together, and I got that notice that came across. Congratulate Ashley on promotion. I was like, oh my goodness, look what she's doing. This is great. So I've kind of bragged on here in the past about past students that have gone into admissions, Ashley, and I've said there were 3 because I didn't realize you were actually doing this. So now we've got 4, and I'm excited about it. So in talking with Ashley, our regular listeners know that what I like to do is when I find sort of a dynamic communicator, a thought leader in an area, I like to talk to them about what their passions are. And one thing in talking with Ashley, maybe a month or so on the phone, I could see she had a passion for working with community colleges. I see she's done that at not just one institution, but with 2. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, is understanding community colleges, because I really feel as if community colleges are a great opportunity that are oftentimes overlooked. So Ashley, why don't you start us out by talking a little bit about the recruitment that you've done at community colleges?
Sure. Well, at Wesley College, which was my first institution, we were a traditional, 4-year program, students right out of high school. So we did receive a good number of transfer applications. So from there, we really did have a database full of transfer colleges that we've looked at, previously evaluated, where we can kind of quickly plug in course that they've taken and what its equivalent would be at our school, to provide the students an idea of the time that they would have left. And we would also travel to some of these community colleges to speak to students at transfer event nights and things of that nature. And then the school that I work for currently is more of a non-traditional program where the majority of our students are adult students who may have previously attended college and then taken a break to start families or go back to work. And we're evaluating their prior college experience as well as prior learning skills, certifications, and other knowledge that they have, and quantifying that to credit to help them finish their time faster.
Yeah, and there's a myth out there. It's particularly prevalent in middle class, upper middle class circles that community colleges are almost like turning onto a street only to find you're in a cul-de-sac. In other words, basically opportunity killers. And I have to admit, like in my own family, how I grew up, it really would not have been seen as being successful if I would have gone to a community college. That was just sort of the mindset. But there's a lot of success stories that come out of community colleges. And I wonder if there are any one or two that come to your mind in your recruitment, Ashley, that you could share with us.
Well, definitely. Well, I would also first like to say that we do love to recruit students from community colleges because they're often more academically prepared for the rigor of the college curriculum. I can think to one student in particular that was apprehensive of starting immediately into the traditional college environment. They felt like they wouldn't succeed. They had never, attended a college class before. So they decided to start slowly at a community college, easing into their workload, figuring out how to balance their responsibilities, use time management, things like that. And then when they came to us, they had already received their associate's degree, were much more confident in their academic abilities, and were able to kind of hit the ground running and finish the remaining requirements for their bachelor's degree in only 16 months. So had this student started with us immediately, they may have been overwhelmed, been at risk for academic warning, or may have even decided on withdrawing. So I really think I'm a big advocate for the community college start, or a stepping stone, as I call it.
And I think another thing, I'm thinking of a couple of private clients I had that I worked with last year, Ashley. Both of them were college professors at a well-known Pennsylvania private college that I won't mention, but you and I know very well. And in talking with both the mom and the dad, they absolutely loved students that had come in and taken a gap year. And so that's in fact what, we ended up doing in their particular case with their child as well. But they'd seen such benefit to that extra maturity when a student had the gap year. And I think with community college students sometimes, and I'm going to ask you if you agree with this, do you feel like a lot of times some of the non-traditional community college students, sometimes they're a little older and they're more mature and they've kind of figured out what they want to do with their life, and they can come in and be more focused? I mean, it's not true all the time, but I certainly have seen that. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, most definitely. I see that. I see that all the time. I mean, you have your students that do that time at community college, or take a gap year, take some classes, and then come to a traditional institution, and they are more prepared. But then on the same hand, you also see, you see other students who kind of jump from school to school and, never really hit that maturity and are never really ready. And it takes a little bit more time, perhaps. So all in all, I think most of what I'm seeing, those students that do put that time in earlier on, ease into it, are more prepared.
And I'm really glad, Ashley, that you presented the other side. I'm not trying to make community college sound like utopia, because one of the reasons students do go to community colleges are because they may not have the grades coming out of high school to get into a 4-year school. And so not every student, transitions successfully. So it is important that we present both sides of that. But let's talk a little bit more about some of the other reasons why a student would go to a community college. You want to comment on that? What are your thoughts from your experience?
Sure. Well, you definitely touched on one of the reasons. Maybe they don't have the grades, to hit a certain GPA requirement for the college that they want to go to. So they do a term or two to get their GPA up before transferring in. But, primarily, why it makes sense for a student to go to a community college is because it does a really great job at, orienting new college students to the college life in general. You're interacting with a variety of different types of students. You're learning time management skills. You're getting accustomed to college academic rigor. And if you struggle at first, that's all part of the learning experience, and then striking that balance between work and school life. And then at least you're struggling at community college prices and not at four-year school prices.
Yeah, and another thing that I would add to that is and you really touched on it, is cost, right? So the average community college, 3,800, somewhere in that range, depending on, varies a little bit from state to state, but those are some national averages. Eminently affordable compared to what the cost of a 4-year residential experience can be. And it just doesn't make sense for some people to incur the levels of debt that they may be looking at incurring if they go 4 years to the traditional residential experience, if the family hasn't saved, if the student is significantly gapped in their financial situation. So I think we're hitting on some of the reasons there. Let's talk about another stereotype that's out there about community colleges. And sometimes this is, in fact, true. Sometimes it's not. But I want to get your thoughts on this. It's the idea that if you come from a community college, that there's a stigma on you, sort of like a big scarlet letter on your chest saying second-class citizen. From your experience, do you feel that when a student transitions from a community college, it will be held against them by peers, professors, the career center and placement? Or do you feel like, once you're transitioning a 4-year student, you're just a regular student there and you'll stand on your own merits based on how well you do both in and out of the classroom? What are your thoughts?
Right. Well, from what I've noticed, it's actually quite the opposite. At least in the institutions that I've worked for, students that transfer from community college and community colleges are looked upon more favorably, actually. All departments see them as more prepared, more mature, and all in all easier to work with. And if anyone were to look down upon these community college transfers, it is their peers. But that's mostly due to a lack of understanding of what community college truly is. Instead of being looked at as an equivalent alternative and even a stepping stone of sorts, community colleges have that stigma of being a cheaper choice with lowered academic quality, and that just isn't the case at all.
Yeah, that's great. And, I just thought about something else I think we should say, Ashley, which is sometimes people go to community colleges because they just need to be close to home as well. And for various reasons, I've seen all kinds of situations, including elderly sick parent needs to be right there. A lot of times the community colleges are most of the time, not residential situations. So oftentimes you are living at home. So I think that's probably worth adding that in there as well.
Most definitely.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
The recommended resource for episode 46 is the book Countdown to College, and the subtitle is 21 To-Do Lists for High School. Now, I want you to get the third edition, which is the most recent edition, and the book is written by Valerie Pierce, also by Cheryl Riley, and Suzette Tyler edited the book. What this book will do is it'll give you checklists so that you don't miss those very important things you need to do. It gives you timelines, and it breaks it down by 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And they're designed to help optimize your chances of getting in the school of your choice. Just yesterday, I was talking to one of my clients, and he brought up how important it is to have checklists so that you don't miss those very important tasks to help you get to the finish line. So this book is great for both students and parents. It has things to do for parents, and it has things to do for students. So I highly recommend the book, Countdown to College, 21 To-Do Lists for High School. Now return to my interview with my former student, Ashley Sempowski. Yeah, so let's talk about a big fear people have with community colleges, and sometimes this is legitimate, sometimes not. It has to do with whether their credits that they took at the community college are going to transfer in, or whether they're not going to transfer in. And a lot of schools have what are called articulation agreements. Can you talk a little bit about what articulation agreements are, whether they're important, not important? I think that's going to be a new term for a lot of our listeners. If you could elucidate that for us, I think it'd be helpful.
Sure. So, an articulation agreement is a formal agreement between two colleges or universities that details the transfer policies for a particular academic program or a degree in general. So, some articulation agreements, particularly with community colleges, acknowledge the work completed by the student at that community college, towards their associate's degree, which then would transfer over to an institution so that they may easily and in a more timely manner finish their bachelor's degree, and so on.
So how can a parent or a student know if an articulation agreement is any good? Because they're not all equally as rock solid in terms of the transfer of credits and that kind of thing. How could a student or parent know that? What advice do you have for them?
Right. So I always tell families that they want to look for two things. The first is you want to make sure the credits are equivalent, if not close to equal. So for example, you wouldn't want to have received a 66 credit associate's degree, but then your receiving institution only acknowledges 50 of those credits, because then you're just kind of wasting time, right? And wasting money because you've already paid for more credits. Secondly, you want to make sure the credits that are transferring in actually count for equivalent courses and not just elective credit. That way, the student isn't retaking courses they may have already taken or too many gen ed courses again at the receiving institution.
So how does somebody find that out? Because I could see a parent and student saying, yeah, I agree, I want to know that, but I don't know how to find that out. Do I go to a manual? Do I go to the website? Is there somebody at the receiving institution that I talk to? What's your advice if they want to, really, really dig down and get into the how to in that area? What do you think?
Well, a little bit before getting into that, I need to, talk about some articulation agreements that I've seen at other institutions that just offer general blanket credit that doesn't truly, recognize the hard work and time that student puts in. So what, I've been doing, and other schools do this as well, we have program-specific articulation agreements. So this may mean that at any one school, we might have 5+ articulation agreements, one for each program that they have. So for example, one of the community colleges that we work with, we have an agreement for their associate's degree in a variety of concentrations. So we've looked closely at the college catalog from the community college and carefully evaluated and matched up the courses so that the transfer was seamless and the student could roll right into the remainder of their courses. So in finding out beforehand what credits will transfer and what we give to students so they have that visual roadmap of what the rest of their degree plan is going to look like, we are in the practice of doing preliminary transfer credit evaluations, or I call them TCEs. So for these TCEs, we look at the transcript from the previous college, fill out what courses they have taken that would fulfill the different aspects of our degree program. And then this preliminary evaluation is sent to the student. So again, like I said, they can have that visual roadmap of the courses they could get credit for and what they would have left to take. Now, obviously, this is preliminary and it's subject to final approval by the registrar, but it is as close of a representation as possible. And it really gives the students an idea of the time that they have left and allows them and their family to make a more informed decision on if this is the right fit for them.
That's great. And I would also add department chair of your major is a good person to talk to as well. Department chair and registrar, those are two very important people just to have conversations with on the receiving school. But that's fantastic. That's awesome. That's great. In the second half of my interview with Ashley, Ashley discusses how applicants that apply from community college are evaluated. She also talks about the growing trend of community colleges to offer 4-year degrees, and she gives her opinions on this. Then Ashley shares a few additional things about community colleges that we just have not discussed already. I then put her on the hot seat, and we get to see the personal side of Ashley a little bit. And finally, she tells us what Springfield College is doing, and she shares the exciting programs that Springfield College is offering right now.
Next week in the news, senators are urging the U.S. News and World Report to overhaul the college ranking formula. And we'll be in chapter 47 of 171 answers. And we're sharing what would be considered a competitive ACT or SAT score. And next week's question is from a dad who wants to know what the total amount of debt his daughter should have through her PhD program. And Mark wraps it up with Ashley Sempowski and their final part of the conversation on what you need to know about community colleges. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. And if you found this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe and write us a review on your favorite podcast listening station. And please be sure to click the share button and send this to someone you know that could really use this information. Your College Bound Kid is produced by John Lockenbaugh. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Artwork is by Andrea Togo. And marketing designs are by Kimberly Blass. If you want to get a copy of the book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, you can go right to 171answers.com. And if you want to have a college coaching session with Mark, you can send him a text to area code 404-664-4340.
And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like for us to answer on the show, please email us at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. That's questions with an S at yourcollegeboundkid.com. Every week, we'll take one question and include it in the episode. We don't like your questions. We love your questions, so send them our way. And by the way, check out our website, which is just simply yourcollegeboundkid.com. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week.